is a disgrace that belies our values as a country.
I think that we will have everyone who wants to run should run.
I think that the situation is actually worse than what we saw under President Mugabe.
The fight over the State of the Union between pen pals President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi continues. Trump confirmed today he plans to speak at the Capitol on January 29th, dismissing Pelosi's concerns about arranging security for the event during a shutdown. Pelosi was quick to write back, saying the House won't authorize the address until the government reopens. Trump responded once more, not in a letter this time, saying they'll, quote, do something in the alternative. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, won't be testifying to the House Oversight Committee next month as planned, and hasn't set another date. Cohen's lawyer blamed President Trump and Rudy Giuliani for threatening Cohen's family, saying Cohen has to put his family and their safety first. Police in Italy are forcing 500 migrants out of a shelter near Rome, the country's first mass eviction since it passed a package of stricter anti-immigrant laws last year. The so-called Salvini decree, named after the country's anti-immigrant interior minister, Matteo Salvini, removes the government's obligation to provide housing to migrants and the protective status that allows them to get residency permits to work. Salvini says closing the shelter will free up €6 million a year to be spent on, quote, Italians. Venezuela's opposition leader, Juan Guaido, swore himself in as acting president today, as tens of thousands of protesters across the country sided with him and against the man they see as a dictator, President Nicolas Maduro. Maduro was sworn into a second term earlier this year, after elections that many countries said were illegitimate, including the US, which quickly followed Guaido's announcement with a presidential endorsement. Maduro accused the US of orchestrating a coup and ordered American diplomats to clear out within 72 hours.
He decidido romper relaciones diplomáticas y políticas con el gobierno imperialista de los Estados Unidos.
Tornillo, the tent city for migrant children in the desert outside El Paso, Texas, closed its doors for good this month. At its peak, the camp held nearly 3,000 kids. But the public still doesn't know much about how it operated, or what went on inside. The Department of Health and Human Services, which oversaw the facility, gave the press almost no access. BCFS, the company that actually ran the camp, doesn't want its workers to talk about it. In response to questions, BCFS told Vice News that, quote, ensuring structure, routine, and boundaries was paramount to the health and safety of all youth, and that it followed all applicable guidelines. HHS said in a statement that it's, quote, committed to ensuring that all unaccompanied alien children referred to our custody are cared for appropriately, and that Tornillo staff worked around the clock to provide safe, compassionate care. But the kids who were detained at Tornillo are now free to tell their own stories.
Me agarró la migración en las rejas, en donde estaba el muro. Me llevó uno de la migración, un señor me llevó. Estaba hablando duro de que yo iba a pasar encerrado 8 años en una detención de menores.
Me llevaron para lo que le llaman la perrera. Ahí estuve un día, luego me llevaron para Tornillo. Ya habíamos casi 3,000.
Le ponía 20 a cada dormitorio y cada vez que quería salir uno tenía que pedir permiso.
Todo el tiempo nos hacían fila. Y de la fila teníamos que estarnos separados una mano de distancia.
Uno pensaba que como que estaba como en las Fuerzas Armadas porque íbamos en fila así como soldados.
El horario de levantada era la misma, a las 5.
De ahí teníamos que hacer limpieza.
Nos fuimos a lavar los dientes, luego fuimos a desayunar.
Nos llevaban ya para estudiar.
Ya después ahí venía la hora del almuerzo.
Después del almuerzo los tocaba ir a jugar soccer.
Desde ahí hasta las 5 venía la cena.
Y ahí al dormitorio otra vuelta.
A las 10:30 se apagan las luces y a dormir todos. Todo lo que hacíamos desde que comenzamos, hacíamos lo mismo. No cambiaba nada. Todo el tiempo y todo el tiempo y todo el tiempo era lo mismo.
Pues sí, había muchas reglas.
No permitían que entre compañeros se dieran la mano o estuvieran juntos.
Lo único que hacíamos es saludarnos. Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Ok, con la mano, solo así.
Los maestros eran como quien dice la sombra de uno. Siempre caminaban ahí, nunca lo dejaban solo.
Cuando uno le decía que tenía hambre, les decían que molestábamos mucho y que este no era el país de nosotros para estar pidiendo tantas cosas.
A veces dibujaba cuando estaba deprimido. Así pues, cuando estaba deprimido me ponía a dibujar para no seguir estar deprimido. Entonces para olvidar me ponía a dibujar mejor.
Yo los días lunes y viernes hablaba 10 minutos con mi familia. 5 para mi tío y 5 para mi mamá yo hablaba. Para mí era como nada, como que si no hablé con ella.
Si nos tardábamos más de 10 minutos, nos hacían el reporte.
Y si a uno le ponen un reporte, no lo dejan por muchos más días ahí en el albergue. O si tiene muchos reportes, le dicen ellos que puede ganarse la deportación para sus países.
Sí, tenía miedo que me fueran a deportar otra vez para Honduras.
Cuando yo me enteré de que los iban a mover, que se está cerrando todo, pues me sentí alegre y un poco triste también por los amigos que dejaba ahí, que todavía estaban en el albergue de Tornillo, y para los que iban a ser transferidos para otros albergues.
Ya había salido de ahí y iba a estar con mi papá. Tenía como 13 años que él no lo miraba, no lo conocía.
Y estas son las gorras que nos enseñaron a hacer allá. Me pongo triste, mejor no me la pongo y la dejo ahí.
La verdad no quiero recordar que estuve en ese lugar, no quiero recordar que caí. Lo único que quiero vivir es el presente y olvidar el pasado, pero no. Es una experiencia muy grande, como le digo, y no creo borrar eso de mi vida.
Cuando salí del Tornillo, no podía creer que ya estaba sentado en el autobús. Ya éramos libres, nos dijeron. Ya son libres para salir de aquí. No están legalmente legalizados, nos dijeron. Pero ya es mejor que estar aquí, nos dijeron.
The government shutdown is such a mess that we're going to turn our attention to a different political soap opera, the wide-open Democratic primary for 2020. Just today, another candidate threw his hat in the ring, a candidate you've likely never heard of, Mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg.
It's time for a new generation of leadership in our country.
This is expected to be a very crowded field. What do you think you're bringing to this?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that I'm not like the others. I'm the only one who is living a middle-class lifestyle. I am the first openly gay person to seek the Democratic nomination. At the end of the day, this has to be about ideas.
The Democratic field is already crowded, and we're just getting started. Right now, there are 9 declared, seemingly viable candidates, including Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Elizabeth Warren. There are at least a few who everyone thinks are going to get into the race. Then there are the people we are trying to divine the tea leaves about. And there are probably some people we're not even thinking of who may run. It's a lot of fun for journalists and political hacks to watch the storm brewing, but it's probably going to be less fun for the voters trying to make sense of it all, and for party leaders trying to keep the race from devolving into a shit show. We know this because we saw its parallel last time, on the Republican side, where the debates were so overcrowded, they were basically pointless.
Don't worry about it. All right, wait. Don't worry about it, little Marco.
Gentlemen,
You ought to show up.
Gentlemen, you gotta do better than those.
The Democratic Party apparatus doesn't want to see its one shot at defeating Trump collapse in the chaos. So the Democratic National Committee is trying to impose order, at least at the debates. The DNC says there will be 12 primary debates total, 6 this year and 6 in 2020. But the biggest challenge is just figuring out who gets to be on stage.
We want to make sure that we're learning lessons from the 2016 Republican debates as well. And so right now, what we're doing is trying to figure out how we are as inclusive as possible for the first two debates. So we're not only looking at polling for the first two debates, but we're also looking at grassroots fundraising.
What do you mean specifically?
We're looking at low dollar fundraising from people from all over the country, making sure that you have a broad-based support, that people are excited about your candidacy, right?
Is self-funding for some of the billionaires that have jumped in or might jump in, or millionaires that have jumped in or might jump in, does that count against you?
No, of course not. Nothing counts against you. We want to make sure that we have the most inclusive debate possible.
You can see why the DNC might actually want to go farther than it has and really limit who can participate in the debates. But doing that would risk looking like it was trying to influence the outcome, repeating its own biggest mistake from 2016.
There's no question to my mind, and I think no question to any objective observer's mind, that the DNC was supporting Hillary Clinton and was in opposition to our campaign.
From the Democratic side, we learned that we need to have a transparent and fair process. At any time, whenever your
Is that admitting in some ways that it wasn't a transparent and fair process in 2016?
I was not here in 2016, but what I've heard from people is that they felt like they weren't given a fair shake. And their supporters felt like that too. And whether, that was the case in terms of the process in 2016, I'm not sure. But what I can say is the fact that they felt that it was not fair is unacceptable.
There have been changes to get them to more transparency. They've overhauled the nominating process so that a candidate can't just hoard superdelegates to win the primary. But when it comes to who can enter the race in the first place, the DNC has adopted a come on in, the water's fine attitude. And while that seems fair, it also risks letting the debates be hijacked by the loudest, most aggressive candidates. Not that we're thinking of anything specific. Is there a point where it is literally too many people to actually be able to have anything that isn't totally unruly?
I don't think that there is any number that is too large, any number, that is too small. I think that we will have everyone who wants to run should run. I think that we learned from the 2016 primary process that they had a lot of candidates. It got messy at times, but guess what? They won.
There has now been 10 days of protest against Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and a crackdown by his government has killed at least 12 people. A human rights commission set up by Mnangagwa's own administration today accused security forces of systematic torture in their response to demonstrations. More than 600 people have been detained, and monitoring groups have reported that soldiers are going door to door under the cover of darkness, beating men, women and children suspected of demonstrating. Many protesters have gone into hiding.
I have to be here because you have seen what has happened to my colleagues across the country. It's only sensible that I should find some sanctuary of some sort to operate from. The idea is that I must continue to operate, to coordinate, to assist those that have been injured and to provide the required leadership to keep the movement going.
But have you been surprised at the price that you are having to pay?
I am actually totally surprised. Here is a man who came promising commitment to democratic practices, constitutionalism, rule of law, business even. But what we have gotten is totally the opposite. And I think that the situation is actually worse than what we saw under President Mugabe. And it's very unfortunate that Mr. Mnangagwa would betray the people of Zimbabwe so much.
The economy here was already in meltdown, but it was Mnangagwa's decision to hike fuel prices by 150% that brought demonstrators out into the streets. Queues for gas have reached miles long, and it was his idea to clean up the mess by raising prices. But it backfired. Fuel in Zimbabwe is now the most expensive in the world, and citizens are furious. The irony is that Mnangagwa's presidency was meant to be a new chapter for a democratic Zimbabwe, after 40 years of dictatorship under Robert Mugabe. But at the heart of this crisis is a power struggle within the party that Robert Mugabe founded, ZANU-PF. Mnangagwa won the presidency in a disputed election last year.
We want to grow, modernize, mechanize
And now he's being challenged by his own vice president, General Chiwenga, who led a bloodless coup against Mugabe that effectively put Mnangagwa in power. Both men are former Mugabe allies. Now, sources close to the president have told us that Chiwenga wants power himself, that he instigated the crackdown while Mnangagwa was overseas. We spoke to Chiwenga during last July's election campaign.
We are saying we want to build the Zimbabwe we want. The Zimbabwe every Zimbabwean would enjoy.
And what was preventing that before?
You want us to go back into history? Are you serious about that? We can't go on and on about it, in history.
It also seems a bit convenient that Mnangagwa, a man nicknamed the Crocodile, himself accused of overseeing massacres in the 1980s, might be able to deflect responsibility for the first major crisis of the new regime.
Demonstrators gathered in Hungary's capital again this weekend to protest the government's controversial slave law, a change that allows employers to force workers into 400 hours of overtime a year.
Elsősorban azért vagyunk itt, mert a rabszolgatörvénybe vezették, akkor előtte kérdezzenek meg minket, mert ez nekünk nem jó, és nem vagyunk rabszolgák.
It's the strongest show of opposition to Prime Minister Viktor Orbán since his nationalist Fidesz party took office in 2010. But as one of Europe's most popular leaders, it likely won't force him out of power. 2/3 of Hungarians voted for Orbán, partly due to his unorthodox and generous social policies aimed at building up a prosperous middle class.
Ki jött haza? Hazaért, apa? Hello.
Janet and Tomasz Kościusz are only 28 and 31. But in 2016, they were able to build this brand new house thanks to Orbán's housing policies. Under a program called CHUK, more than 92,000 families, including the Kościusz's, have been awarded grants to buy or build a new home, a lump sum that can amount to up to twice the average annual salary.
Ez itt Vencel szobája, és terveink szerint itt 2 gyerek fog majd később aludni.
The more kids you have, the better the perks. A middle-class family with 3 children may never have to pay income tax again.
Do you think you'd have started a family already without shock?
Nem. Hát abba a kis lakásban nem valószínű, hogy vállaltunk volna.
I guess it's kind of like a deal or a bargain with the government that you'll have a certain number of children.
Mi a legmagasabb összegűt vállaltuk be, ami azt jelenti, hogy mi 3 gyereket vállaltunk, erre jár a 10 millió forint.
Ezt lehetővé teszi, és 10 évünk van ezt teljesíteni.
Mindenki azzal jött, hogy a pulizásnak annyi.
This commercial is part of the government's Year of the Family initiative. It's targeted at millennials, part of a concerted government effort to raise the country's birth rate without relying on immigration.
Azt mondták, már egyel sem fogok bírni, és most jönnek az ikrek. Szülőnek lenni, életre szóló kaland. Ne hagyd ki!
The policy fits into Orbán's model of governance known as illiberal democracy, a hybrid of democracy and soft authoritarianism that promotes itself with references to Hungary's Christian heritage and the traditional family.
És a liberális demokrácia a variálható családmodellek pártján áll, a keresztény demokrácia pedig a keresztény családmodell alapján áll, ami szintén egy illiberális gondolat. Tisztelt Hölgyeim és Uraim, vegyünk tehát magunkon erőt, vállaljuk ezt a szellemi vitát.
But underlying these family policies and the slave law is the government's strong stance against immigration from outside Europe and a desire to boost the birth rate of ethnic Hungarians.
Talking about the demographic rationale for this, how does that tie in with other kind of preoccupations of the Fidesz government?
Well, it actually ties in with various other preoccupations. One of them is economic growth, that economic growth has to be based on middle-class fertility boom. And the other thing is that this whole story of demographic growth from within is framed as being in a sharp opposition with immigration or with migration from other countries, especially from Islamic countries.
Last year, a government survey gauged support for the policies with 10 questions including, do you agree that the decrease of the population shouldn't be remedied by immigration, but with a more energetic support of families? The findings will end up on Katalin Novak's desk.
In the National Consultation Questionnaire, one of the questions links the government's family policies with the migration question. How do the two kind of central planks of Hungarian government policy interact?
That's, I think, very logical because, you know, if you have a lack of people, I mean, if you have a huge demographic decline, migration can be also a logical solution to the demographic problems. And many Western states, let's say, in the European Union also choose that, even if they don't say so, but they do choose it. And in Hungary, we think that that should not be a solution.
Why is it considered so important to arrest Hungary's demographic decline?
Well, it is about our future. It means that if we will last as Hungarians, as Hungary, or if we cease to exist after a while.
Prime Minister Orbán has spoken of Hungary's illiberal democracy, as he calls it, as a model for the rest of Europe. Do you think policies like this will become more common across the continent?
It is a Christian democratic point of view, of course, as well. And we help to maintain this family-oriented and family-friendly environment, which we do have in Hungary. I don't know if others would also realize this, but I see some kind of movement in that direction.
Since Orbán came to power, the country has seen a modest baby boom. The real legacy, however, may be cementing voter support for Orbán and his populist style of governing.
Obviously, the CSOK program was brought in by the current government. Does that make you more likely to vote for Fidesz?
Igazából mi előtte is a jelenlegi kormányt támogattuk. Ez a segítség, ez végül is megerősített ebben, és mi továbbra is kitartunk mellettük, minden hibájuk ellenére.
Hi, this is Bradford Cox from the group Deerhunter, and I'll be breaking down the song Plains. The chorus didn't exist until we were recording in Marfa, Texas. We're at the hotel where James Dean stayed when he filmed Giants.
I guess you're about the best-looking gal we've seen around here in a long time.
That's when I added a lot of that direct appeal to James Dean.
Oh, James, you've got no reason to stay in these plains.
It's about, chasing after somebody that's headed inevitably towards the end of their life. We had a version of Plains recorded that I felt lacked a lot of narrative power. And I was shopping at the Goodwill, and on the intercom, they played Whitney Houston. How Will I Know? I found it to contain a lot of the human experience. I said to myself, okay, Whitney, let's go. Whitney Houston's song has a long electronic percussion intro. I did think a percussion intro would be the exact thing needed. If I had to choose a single defining characteristic of this song aside from the vocals, it would be the synth bass. I called it a synthetic base system, which sounds like both futuristic and antiquated. What's more interesting to me is to pervert it and make it uglier, throw it against the wall, to give it some sort of grain. The sadness of the death of Whitney Houston, along with the sadness of the death of James Dean, and particularly a fascination with being between two worlds, two planes, the living and the dead. I need a copy of this so I can put that in my files.